the great tradition of winners coming from the West, Troy MacMillan's going to join us now to tell us his story. And it's just been fantastic to spend a bit of time with Troy over the last couple of days, and we're all dreaming up ways to, you know, send him a few curveballs. But maybe that's for next week. Troy, welcome.
Thanks, Richard. Good morning, everyone. I have to say it's a great privilege to be here in Perth, obviously my hometown. When I won the award in October, it was obviously a great honour, but also a really humbling experience. So since then, everything's been really great for myself, my family, and my business. I think it's important to note, as Richard just mentioned, that we've had a lot of winners from WA for this award. We've had Steve Salvia last year, Anna Smith a few years before that. You've heard from Mark Radigan earlier. And when I was a finalist, we had Brian Woods and Mark Rando. So it's quite amazing, WA, how much success we've had. Now, Richard's asked me to speak to you a little bit about myself, a little bit about my journey, I guess, to where I've got to, how I've got to win the award, and a little bit about the business. So I feel really fortunate to be a financial planner, really fortunate because I love the financial planning industry. I really care about the advice profession. I like the fact that most people who know me as the finance guy or the financial planning guy. When I say most people, I certainly don't mean all people. And I'll give you an example. I've got a story just to start off with. I go to the same gym every Saturday at the same time. And by going the same time every week, I sort of built up a bit of rapport with this lady behind the front counter. So every time we go, we have about 2 minutes of conversation. Hi, how are you? How was your week? How are your kids? And then one Saturday when I came there earlier this year, she reached across the counter and she goes, Troy, I've never asked you, but what do you do for a living? And quite proudly I said, I've got a financial planning business. And then she looked absolutely shocked. She goes, really? I would never think that you'd do something like that. And I said, yeah, of course, I've been doing it for ages. She goes, I just can't believe it. So I started thinking, well, maybe because I'm in my gym clothes, she doesn't see me as a financial planner. I said, oh, fair enough. So I walked away. Then the next week, came back again on a Saturday. And this time she said to me as I walked away, we had our 2 minutes of conversation, she yelled out, she goes, Troy, how are the flowers? And then she started giggling with the girls in the front counter, so I was really embarrassed. And I was like, just ignored it. And then it came up again a couple of weeks later. And to be honest with you, I really didn't like this lady anymore. I didn't even want to turn up at this gym, but I had to go. It was after swimming lessons and before gymnastic lessons for the kids. It was 1 hour on a Saturday that I had. So then a few weeks later again, I turned up. We had 2 minutes of conversation. Hi, how are you? And this time she reached across and she goes, Troy, do you do weddings at all? I've gone, weddings? She goes, you know, with the flowers, do you do weddings at all? And I said, look, Julie, honestly, I just don't understand it. I don't get the joke. She goes, but Troy, don't you have a frangipani business? And I said, no, financial planning business, but thanks for believing that I'd be a flower salesperson. I'm married to Gemma. I have two beautiful girls, Allegra and Aria, who are 5 and 3. This is when we went to Disneyland just after winning an award, which was a great experience. When I got married in a Greek Orthodox church, and it really was a case of my big fat Greek wedding. On one side there was 4 of my family, on the other side there was 300 first, second and third, fourth cousins. My wife's family originates from Kastorolizo, which is a small island in Greece, just near Turkey. You can see Turkey in the background there. My wife's brother Steve, I invited him into the business 2 years ago. Steve's a chartered accountant, very smart guy, and he had a great personality. I thought would be perfect for financial planning. And I'm pleased to say it's all worked out really well. Just last week, Steve brought equity into the business, and it's really started, I guess, our succession plan, Steve being 10 years younger than me. The thing with Steve is that Steve and my wife have exactly the same personalities. So I'm fortunate to feel like I'm around my wife 24/7. My journey into advice sort of started, I guess, when I was young. I loved investing. I bought my first shares, Woodside shares, when I was 16. Bought my first property when I was still at uni. And then I left uni in 1991 and did what everyone would do, took a year off. Went over to America with my best mate, had a fantastic time, and those memories obviously best left with me than to share with you. But the best thing about that trip was that we pretty much backpacked around America, except for the final week. In fact, the final week we spent just as much in 1 week as we did for the 51 weeks before. Because we went skiing in Aspen, Colorado. And that decision was one of the pivotal points in my life, because one morning I was having breakfast at a very fancy hotel, and there was a gentleman sitting next to me having breakfast all by himself. So I invited him to our table. And little did I know what an effect that would have on my whole life, because he eventually became a big mentor of mine. He was a director on the board of 12 different American companies, Chevron being one of them. And later on in my life, in '92, I came back to Perth, started working at a chartered accountancy firm. But 3 years later, I went back to America, and I worked with him over in New York. Really worked as a personal assistant. He shared with me his portfolio. It was a pretty impressive portfolio. But he shared with me everything he knew about investing. He was a Warren Buffett-style investor, and really gave me tutorials on investing. So if I liked investing before, I really had a passion for it now. So in 1996, I went to Tokyo. I got a job with Deutsche Bank, doing investment banking, working on the Pacific Rim. But I didn't go to Tokyo for that. I actually went to pursue my dream of training with the world's greatest karate instructor. I've been doing karate for many, many years, and he was my Mr. Miyagi. So I went to Tokyo, trained in this dojo. There was only 10 of us. I was the only foreigner allowed into the dojo. And that experience taught me a lot of things. It taught me a lot of discipline, respect, and that you really had to do a lot of the basics to become a master like him. In fact, you need to dedicate a lifetime to become a master. I think they say 10,000 hours you have to commit to doing it. We trained really hard. We trained from 6 to 9 every night, and it was only 9 o'clock if we finished on time. We weren't allowed to leave until he left, and sometimes that went to 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night. We did that 6 days a week and did it for 4 years. In 1999, I moved across to London and worked at Deutsche Bank over there, this time in European markets. And then in 2001, I came home for family reasons. And when I came home, obviously back in Perth back then, there was no investment banking. So I went into what I thought was the next best thing, which was financial planning. And obviously I soon learned after that it wasn't all about investing. In 2003, I left the bank with a colleague from the bank because we believed we could do it better. We didn't want to be locked into selling predefined products. So we started a partnership. And when I look back to that partnership, it was in Leederville, and there's a few people here who would remember when we started off. It was a little tiny office, about 50 square metres, and most of that was at the front of the office. The back office was more like a closet. And Graham Highland, who came in as our business coach a few years later, he used to call it the sweatshop, because there was about 6 people all back to back working away, and the clients obviously had no idea. We used to pretend it went way back, way back. But in actual fact, it didn't at all. So those days, how did we win business? And honestly, I don't know. We didn't have a value proposition. The only way we won business was, I think we had so much enthusiasm to succeed. And also, I think we had really great rapport building skills that were useful back then. But the business did become successful, and in 1996 we corporatised, and 2006 we corporatised. But then, unfortunately, at the end of the 7 years of that partnership, things began to sour. The relationship with my partner wasn't going so well. We had different ideas of how to manage clients, staff, and the business, so I decided to separate. That was the most stressful time of my life because not only did it cost a lot of money to move away, obviously to move away and to start again, but we had no business, we had no branding, we had no processes, no really anything. What we did have had some loyal staff and had some loyal clients, and we had a business plan that we all believed in. And the good thing for us, when I think back now, is that we were able to start fresh. We had the old world and we had the new world. And we just concentrated on the new world. So in a matter of fact, we actually had to go back quite a few steps before we could go forward. And then the Wealth Designer started in November 2009. So with the Wealth Designers, our main skill sets are around client management, project management, and strategic management. When we talk client management, we're talking about the skill, the mastery of the client engagement process, but also showing leadership to the clients around the important decisions that they need to make and prioritising those decisions for the client. When it comes to project management, it's really around our skill to deliver the outcomes on time and on budget to the clients. And finally, strategic management was our ability to position the micro operational advisory steps in the much larger macro picture to the client. Now, the other good thing with starting fresh is that we had ideal clients and we were very strict around who we were going to see. Of course, in the old days, we'd see anybody, but now we want to be very, very strict in who we're going to see. And the first thing is our clients have to take advice. Not just the easy advice, they've got to be able to take the hard advice, because really that's the advice that matters. The advice around changing their behaviours, around giving them, if we want them to start spending less, if they don't take our advice, it's very hard for us to reach the outcomes that are important to them. Not just our advice, but also our process. If we want both a husband and wife to come to the meeting, well then they have to come to the meeting. It's got to be complex, and when we're talking defining complex, it's not for us, it's what's defined to the client. Because if the client doesn't deem something to be complex, they're never going to buy our advice. They've got to be respectful. Now, we can't professionally care for a client unless we respect them. But to respect them, they've got to respect us. So we're not going to take clients who are rude to staff, late for meetings, dominating conversations and complaining about fees. We've got to be able to add value. Not just any value, we want to be able to add significant value to the client. Clients really don't care about all the finite things that we do, like the portfolio management, the asset allocation. Well, some do, but not many. What they care about is the relationship that they have with us can maximise the probability of them achieving the outcomes that are important to them. We engage clients at the Wealth Designers on the why factor, not the what factor. So before we can determine what we're going to do for the client, we have to discover why they're going to be engaged as clients and why they're going to pay our fees. To give you an example, if the client's at a dinner party and someone asks them, well, why do you engage the Wealth Designers? We don't want them to turn around and say, oh, they're the self-managed super fund experts, or those guys are great at investing. We want them to turn around to say, well, those guys maximise the probability of me achieving my outcome of working 4 days a week so I can spend more time with the kids, Amy and Andrew. That's what we want them to say. It's on the why factor. And if you think about it, if we were engaged on the what factor, if we did the self-managed super fund, we got the property and the super, and we did the gearing, what happens next year? What happens next year when that's done? How are we going to charge a fee once our advice has been given? So if we engage in the why factor, we're always going to have a relationship with the client that's based on peace of mind. Finally, they've got to want to pay for the advice, and of course, got to be able to pay for the advice, because they know by following the advice, it's going to give them the best chance of reaching their outcomes. And when they pay for the advice, it's got to be visible, transparent, and not linked to any product. We only charge flat fixed fees, and by doing that, we find it's so easy for the client, but not just for the client, it's so easy for our centres of influence and accountants. Things we focus on in the business and things I focus on as the managing director, and these things that we measure regularly, is that we want a PE ratio of 10 times. So for every dollar profit, we want a value of 10 times. All our advisors, including myself, have a face time of 60%. So 60% of the time, we're in front of prospects, clients, networks, centres of influence, influencers, or accountants and so on. For every first meeting, so we want 80% success factor. So 4 out of 5, every first meeting, we get the chance to move on to the next stage. For the 100 active clients that we have, we want 66 referrals each and every year from our clients. We want 25% growth on our revenue. We want a 90% thrill factor for our clients. And that's done from an independent survey that 90% of the time the clients are happy to come back to us and want to work with the Wealth Designers. And then we have a 40% EBITDA. So 40% profit on every client every year going forward. These are things we measure, and the staff are measured on the face time of 60%. So it's their job to ensure the advisors achieve a face time of 60%. If you'd ask me what I'm most proud of, is this. It's my ability to build a great team who are all culturally aligned, loyal, and totally in sync with our vision to be a great advice firm that solves clients' complexity and delivers certainty to clients around their outcomes. The other thing is the ability to bring young professionals like Steve into the business. We've got 4 people who come from chartered accounting backgrounds now as advisors, and I'd never thought I'd be able to attract people of that sort of profession into the industry. So you can see how things are changing in our industry. If you ask me what the biggest breakthrough's been, the biggest breakthrough happened last week. Last week I was told by 2 staff members that I was no longer required in our 3rd biggest client's review meeting. Now that could be a bad day or it could be a good day. For me that was the best day, because that meant for the first time really I felt that we were totally confident that we're on track to have less key person dependency. We spent a lot of time with our branding, and we started out from day one. We set the business up 2.5 years ago to look and feel where it should be now. So when people first came to our office 2.5 years ago, we wanted to look like an award-winning practice, but it wasn't. But we wanted the perception to be that it was an award-winning practice. And we've carried that through all the way to where we are now. We engage branding consultants full-time in our business. So everything that goes out of our business, whether it be emails, normal mail, anything at all, is fully branded up. And to be honest with you, that makes a huge difference on made a huge difference from where we are right now. So where to from here? Well, it's quite exciting. We're doing a lot of things internally in the business. What we've recognised is that we have a lot of relationships with accountants and other set of influencers. But a lot of those clients aren't the ideal clients that I talked about, so what do we do with them? We had nowhere to send, we had nowhere to trust to send them. So what we're going to do is we're creating a new business. And the new business of Shape Advisors is really for the C and D clients. They don't need to know that, but they need to know that they're going somewhere that is low complexity, transactional work, but they're going to get the full services and get all the process and systems behind the scenes of the wealth designers. But that way it protects our brand and identity, so they've got somewhere to go. In the last year or so, we've also been really fortunate to win a lot of the private client work. So we want to give the private bank clients an alternative to where to go, and we feel we've got the skills necessary to be able to deal in that market. So that needs an internal brand as well, so it looks and feels that they're in the right place. Those relationships are obviously high complexity, and we become the private CFO for the clients. And then the wealth designers continues on as it is now, with complexity and wanting a relationship. We have offices in West Perth and North Perth, soon to open up in Bunbury. And then we worked really strong to mindsets within the business. This is just our way. And the first one is a probing mindset. And look, I know it doesn't sound quite right, but the probing mindset is really the skill around the client engagement meeting. The skill to be able to ask the bigger questions. The questions around what's important to the client, their goals, their values, their wants, their ambitions, their hopes and their dreams. Because the client's not going to tell us. There's a real skill and mastery in actually asking those questions. And we practice and practice and practice that engagement meeting. Now, those questions can be quite hard, they can be quite difficult. But how do you do it? We don't apologise for asking those questions because we don't jump to any assumptions or make any conclusions around what's important to the client. What we use is scripts. And again, the thought of scripts a few years ago horrified me. But the scripts give us a framework to go into meetings. We take control of the meeting by having scripts. And again, we practice and practice the scripts, so they're not robotic at all. My personality comes out, Steve's personality comes out, the other advisor personality comes out. But I don't need to be in the meeting, so I know the client is going to have exactly the same experience whether I'm in the meeting or not in the meeting. And by having scripts, again, we can also, as a managing director, I can also mark people on how they went. It's up to the staff to make sure that the advisors are always present in the room. Then it's up to us as the advisors to be totally focused in that meeting. It's so easy to be distracted. I mean, we've all been distracted. You go into a meeting, you've got the kids still on your mind, you might have had a phone call before, but you've got to be in the zone because you've got to hear everything the client is going to say. We're not scared to use silence. And I'm one of those people who can't stand silence at a dinner conversation. I have to talk, I can't stand it. So imagine in a client situation where there's silence. I mean, the thought of it used to terrify me. But now we use it as our secret weapon, to sit back and just let the clients think about some of these probing questions that we're asking to really get the results that we're looking for. We win all our clients now on trust, not rapport. And what I've realised over many, many years is that clients don't need more friends. We don't need more friends. But if we do our job well with trust, the rapport is going to come anyway. I'll give you the example when I flew over here on Qantas. I didn't really care that the captain sounded a little bit arrogant. Didn't really bother me. When we hit turbulence yesterday, I felt quite comfortable that guy flying the ship was the most trusted person to get us where we need to get to. We record all our meetings, not just our discovery meetings, we record all our meetings. And not only is it a great compliance tool, but again, by recording it, I can listen to the tape and find out how did Steve go in that meeting? Did he say the right things? And I can get marked up by our consultant to know that how did I go in the meeting? Because I'm always improving. No, by no means am I fantastic at these meetings, but I'm improving all the time. Also, I'm a male. I can't listen and take notes. It's impossible. We can't do two things at once. So by recording, I can just concentrate on listening to the client. Finally, we don't go solo into any meeting. We insist on both clients to be there, and we always have two people to a meeting. And again, the thought of having someone else come in to meet with me years ago would have terrified me as well. It would have crowded my space. But now I can't imagine not going to the meeting without that support. It reduces key person dependency, it makes you enjoy your meetings more, and you have a much broader client engagement. So the very last thing I talked about was building teams. We have first chair and second chair. Now sometimes I play first chair, sometimes someone else plays first chair. First chair is just the person dominating the meeting. The second person is the person supporting the meeting. We all have our roles, but the client doesn't know. We just have roles internally. So sometimes I can sit back in second chair and let someone else run the meeting. Sometimes my assistant, Michelle, she comes in the meeting, she plays first chair. Now she has no advisory skills, but she's got a great skill of asking the bigger questions. And to be honest with you, the girls at our practice ask those questions far better than the guys. This is not a quote that I came up with, but it's a quote that I've adopted myself when dealing with clients, and one that our staff have adopted. People are influenced most by those they trust, admire, and genuinely believe care for them. Thanks very much.